This video will show how to paint the dirt and rock tiles. This is done in 3 steps. The first step is to paint the whole thing a dirt color. Second step is to apply a dark wash. And the last step is to dry brush a light dirt color on top of it. Now the first thing we're going to do is we're going to paint the tiles a dirt color. And on the website, I have paint color samples for various brands of paint listed on the website. This is a chip from one of the brands of paint, I don't remember which. But if what I list on the website is not a brand of paint that your store carries, there are other ways to match the color of paint. Now one way to get the dirt color is to actually compare it to real dirt. This is some dirt I've dug up in the yard and let dry a little bit, and I threw it into a little baggie. You might look a little odd carrying a big old bag of dirt in the hardware store, so a tiny bag of it is enough to just kind of compare the color sample. And what you want to do is just compare it to the sample chips that they have in the store. And you want to go a couple of shades lighter because we're going to simulate dirt that sun is shining on. So it needs to be several shades lighter than the actual dirt. Otherwise it's going to be just a bit too dark. Another way to match the color is to use artist acrylic tube paint. And the color I'm thinking of is raw umber. Raw umber is basically spot on exactly the color of dirt as it is from the ground. So you will need to mix it with white in order to get it the color that we want. And on the website I've got a link to how much white you mix with the raw umber to get this particular color that you want. However, I don't recommend doing this because artist tube paints are expensive. This little tube right here is like $5, and for $5 you can get a whole quart of paint mixed up for $5 just as well. Okay, here I have a quart of dirt colored house paint that I had mixed up, and what I'm going to do is thin it a little. You don't really have to thin it a little if you don't want to, but I think it just goes on a little easier. House paint straight is just a little bit thick, so I don't really need quite that much of it. So what I would do is I would take about that much, and I would just get a little bit of water in it there, just to thin it down a little bit. Probably about that should do it. And if you leave it thick, it's fine, because the next coat we put over this is going to be an ink wash, and if you miss any little spots, that ink wash is going to soak right down in there anyway, so it really won't be much of a problem. So, you know, that's pretty good. If you're going to use a mix of the raw umber and water, you'll definitely have to thin it if you're using art paints. But anyway, we'll go ahead and put a coat of brown paint over this floor. So you don't have to be very careful, but you do want to be sure to jam it into all the cracks as you're going down. So basically what we're doing here is I'm just putting the paint on, and I'm just kind of jamming it down into the cracks of these dirt and rock tiles here. And do that until you get the whole thing completely painted. Don't forget to also paint your sides. Now once you get this thing painted over, be sure to take a look over it, because you might have puddles in places where around these sharp edges where paint will pool. If you've got any paint that pools up, be sure that you daub that excess up and then scrape it off like on the side of your paint can or whatever you got your paint in there. You don't want any of the excess because that's going to take away from your detail. I mean, you may not think about it, but paint actually has thickness to it. And there's a lot of fine detail, a lot of fine grains in this that will really pick up nice, but you don't want to cover those up by pools of paint.